I don't care what you think about him as a player, as an NFL draft prospect. I know this much is true. If you were doing an NFL-themed spelling bee, Equanimeous St. Brown would be the grand prize question. That would be the word you have to spell to win the whole shabang-a-bang. Say it with me. Equanimeous St. Brown. There's something regal and almost royal sounding about that name. It really is. And not just because his dad was a freaking god in his time and a world-class Mr. Olympia. The fact that he added Saint in there because he wanted to, freaking just awesome. But Equanimeous St. Brown, when you look at him, you have to wonder, could he be A.J. Green? Could he be Stephen Hill? That really is the range for this guy. Could he be a potential future multiple-time Pro Bowler? Because size, athleticism-wise, he profiles very similarly to A.J. Green. That said, you could also make the argument he profiles very, very similarly to Stephen Hill. If you remember Stephen Hill, Georgia Tech, second-round pick of the Jets, 2012. If I recall correctly, I liked him quite a bit. Epic bust. Epic bust. So which one is he? Or is the truth somewhere in the middle? Well, let's try to figure out what to make out of Equanimeous St. Brown. Here's what stands out to you as the positives, the things that make you think that he could be an A.J. Green type of guy. He's got the true prototype height, length of a number one outside wide receiver. And even though he looked kind of scrawny on film, and I still feel like he can add a little bit of weight, he did come into the combine and weigh in at 215 pounds. Well, it's not a small dude. He got bigger. He probably could add another 10 pounds or so over time. But make a baby or two once you get into the league, that 10 pounds will happen very quick-like. So the potential is there. But that height, that length, that prototype size of a number one wide receiver. The speed to be a surprising vertical threat. Like sometimes with these taller wide receivers, you worry about how quickly they can get up to top speed. Do they have lateral agility? Can they make people miss in the open field? Equanimeous St. Brown is a better athlete than you might think. And not just because he ran sub 4.5 in the 40 at the combine. If you watched him at Notre Dame the past 2 years, you saw sub 4.5 speed. You saw a guy that had the speed to be a vertical threat. You saw a guy that had the speed to make some big plays happen. Not the quickest guy in the world, but a little bit underrated in terms of his quickness and his suddenness. Not going to make a ton of people miss in the open field, but still enough of a big play threat where you have to worry about him. He's a guy with that length. He can adjust to poorly thrown balls in a variety of different ways. You know, you don't want a guy that's 6'5" that can't go up and get the ball at its highest point. In theory, Equanimeous St. Brown can do just that. He can adjust to those poorly thrown balls. He really did a good job, especially in 2017, because Wimbush sucked for Notre Dame as their quarterback. He had to adjust to a lot of balls that were thrown behind him, thrown really low, and I felt like he did a good job of being able to adjust to those because, frankly, he doesn't know who's going to quarterback at the NFL level for him. He might need to adjust to a lot of poorly thrown balls in order to get his, in order to be productive, and he showed that ability in Notre Dame in 2017 as his production dipped because Wimbush sucked and that passing game of the Fighting Irish sucked to be able to adjust and make some of those plays. Like I said, he's got some run after the catch ability. I mean, like at 6'5", he's not going to have a ton of wiggle, but he can utilize that length and that height, and he can stiff arm. He will run with some anger and some physicality when he wants to. So you see those type of traits, and you're like, he's got height, he's got length, he's got vertical ability, he's got okay enough quickness, but he's got surprising speed. He can be a vertical threat. He can adjust poorly thrown balls. Some of that sounds like A.J. Green. Some of that sounds like future Pro Bowl outside number one wide receiver type. And it does. But then we get to the stuff that starts to make you think he could be somebody like a Stephen Hill. Too much of a body catcher. He's really sloppy catching the ball with his hands. Like really, really sloppy. He consistently lets the ball get too close into his body. And when he does catch it with his hands, even when he does catch it, you'll notice a lot of times that the ball moves in his hands, that he's got to adjust it. He doesn't, like, grab onto it, grasp it, crisp, as Jeff Garcia would say, he doesn't sit there and get a firm hold of it. The ball is moving. He's got to adjust to it. And sometimes on those tough throws, on those sideline passes, he didn't come down with the catch because he's still trying to adjust the ball in his hands. He's trying to gain control of the ball, where at his size, you would hope he would be able to sit there and just reach out and grab it and hold firm to it. You would hope so, but he just doesn't. He lacks play strength. Like I said, he was really scrawny at Notre Dame. He bulked up a little bit for the combine, but he still got a little bit of ways to go. He doesn't play with a lot of physicality consistently. He doesn't play up to being 6'5", 215 pounds. Also, sometimes I felt like his effort level was less than ideal. Now, in his defense, in 2017, you probably thought he was going to have this monster season, and he was going to end up being a top 10 pick in the draft. He was going to put up all these numbers based off of what happened in 2016 with Deshaun Kaiser. Well, Deshaun Kaiser leaves school. They don't have an adequate replacement at quarterback in place there, and St. Brown's numbers take a tumble. So that may have had partly to do with the lack of effort at times, the lack of fight at times, was the situation he was in was not great. Josh Adams became a greater focal point of the offense. Equanimeous St. Brown took a little bit more of a backseat, not just by choice, but by necessity, because they had to, because Brandon Wimbush sucks. Wimbush absolutely sucks. That's just the way it is. Also with St. Brown, he's got a limited route tree. He's really linear in the routes that he does run, meaning there's not a lot of wiggle to him. There's not a lot of double moves, not a lot of sharp breaks in and out of his cuts. It's just very, very linear. Like, he can make subtle moves. He can make, like, linear type of one-cut moves, but very, very subtle. He's going to have to expand his route tree. He's going to have to become a little bit better with the routes he runs. Now, at 6'5", with the speed that he has, he doesn't have to be the best route runner in the world, but he's going to have to get better. He's going to have to get better. And for a guy his size, he can really get taken out of the equation at the line against physical press coverage, as it seems like every single one of these wide receivers in this draft class can be. You, at 6'5", have to be able to beat that press coverage. You've got to be able to go and sit there and win those 50-50 balls. And he can at times, but again, with him being a body catcher, sometimes it affects his catch radius. His catch radius isn't as big as it could be or it should be. And that will be a bigger concern if he's unable to get off that physical man coverage. Those are the things that make you think that he could be one of those great teases that ends up being a massive bust. I do feel like the truth is going to be somewhere in the middle. I don't think he's A.J. Green, but I don't think he's Stephen Hill either. He's got a size and speed combination that a lot of teams are going to drool over. Again, wide receivers that can run sub 4.5 at 6'5" don't grow on trees. His 2017 production and, frankly, his film in 2017 was really hard to watch because it was ruined by garbage quarterback play and a garbage Notre Dame passing game. So, as I was doing early mock drafts, and I'm mocking him in the top 5 and top 10, I'm kind of envisioning based off of, hey, he's going to have a monster year, and people are going to be drooling over him and his production and what he's able to do, and thinking about projecting him to the NFL, and could he do those same type of things, and then that stuff just didn't happen. So he can become a bit of a tough eval. Because of the circumstance that he was in, and did he really improve off of 2016 or not? He's going to have to get better catching the football with his hands. He's going to have to get stronger catching the football with his hands, or it's massively going to limit his overall upside and potential. If he can work a little bit on his route running and just at least be good, he doesn't have to be great, he just needs to be good, then he could be a tough matchup. He could be a tough cover if he can also learn to play a little bit more physically. There's a chance that he gets drafted higher than where he gets graded by a lot of people, but there's also a chance that you have a number of teams that are very, very bullish on his stock that grade him very, very highly. I look at him, and the player that he reminds me of the most is Jordan Matthews. When Jordan Matthews was coming out of Vanderbilt, talk about a guy 6'3", 6'4", was a slightly under sub 4.5 type of guy. Now, I thought Matthews was a little bit better as a route runner. If I recall correctly, in that 2014 draft class, I had him as the number 4 wide receiver after Watkins, Evans, OBJ. You'll have to keep me honest, but I thought I had like a first to second round grade on him. He was the 4th wide receiver in that class. And he's had a productive career. Obviously, went to Buffalo in 2017, was injured and in a crappy passing game, so that didn't help whatsoever. But when I see Equanimeous St. Brown, I see quite a bit of Jordan Matthews. I see a guy that is more athletic than he's given credit for, Although it's ironic that Jordan Matthews' best success at the NFL level came in the slot, so what the hell do I know? My grade for Equanimeous St. Brown, there was a time where I thought that when it came time to evaluating these wide receivers for this 2018 class, that he was going to be my number one receiver. I thought he was going to be a top 10 graded player overall in this draft because I was going to look at the athleticism and the upside and everything else. I'm not nearly as high on him as I thought I was going to be, but I've still put a mid-second round grade of 87.5 on him. I still look at him and I say, talking about in round 2, you're still trying to gamble on guys that could potentially outplay their draft position. St. Brown could potentially outplay his draft position. He could potentially be a top 3 wide receiver out of this class. He could also potentially massively bust out and be out of the league in 4 years. I like the prospect. I thought I was going to like him more. I wish I did like him more. And for his sake, I feel bad for him because I do feel like 2017 and the lack of production in that Notre Dame passing game significantly hurt his draft stock. And where there could have been an argument made for him going back to school in 2018 and making it right, there was nothing there at Notre Dame that indicated his situation was going to get any better. He frankly needed to leave now before people really questioned him if he had another so-so season. But Equanimeous St. Brown, come round 2, if your team drafts him, know that you're getting a guy with big-time upside, but big-time bust potential. But if he can improve in some of these areas, he's going to be a lot closer to big-time potential than being a bust.